spear bracing. It is something that has been in the game for multiplayer for quite a bit and has recently made its way into single player, but only recently in version 1.6.2 beta branch does Bannerlord now have the ability for all of your units to auto spear brace against a deadly cavalry charge, and that is awesome. So how this works is essentially the patch notes say that any spear weapon, any pike or anything of the sort that has a base length of 230 can brace, and bracing is the same way as, say, couching a lance. You press the same button, there's a little icon, you brace, then you can take in a charge from the cavalry, and that it is to a devastating effect. So what we're going to do here today is exemplify that. You can go ahead and jump ahead if you so wish to the actual combat in which we show this off, but I'm going to give you guys a little preamble here to understand why we're using Valandia and all the other factions, how they don't really benefit from this like Valandia will. So the important thing to remember here is, again, you need a 230 base length. Well, Gaston here, if I hover over this, I can see that his fine pike has a weapon length of 222, which is really weird considering he can brace, and he does not have that base weapon or a weapon length of 230. So that's a kind of a weird little issue. So maybe there's a bug there. Maybe it's just this type of pike in and of itself can always brace. I'm not really sure. We'll have to find out from the developers whenever they kind of troubleshoot this or whatever or what have you. But the issue now is, if I were to look at any other faction and look at their units, especially any unit like the Empire doesn't really have a dedicated spear unit. The closest thing they have to it is a Manavliaton, which is a slashing polearm. And again, it does not have that same length. So even as I even jump into Stygia, which has a heavy spearman unit, it is meant to be used with a shield. So what the kind of big takeaway here is that the only real unit that can benefit from this as of now is the Valandian pikemen. So I would really like Tailworlds to remove that base length, or maybe just make that length lower, right? Like, I don't think Valandian spearmen should be as effective as pikemen at completely destroying cavalry, which we're going to take a look at in a little bit, how devastating this is. And again, this is only going to work for pikemen because no other culture has got a long enough spear in this slot, because for the most part they are spear infantry styled units with shields, so they don't have a shield with them. Even I've taken a look at some of the units off of a horse, and like some of the like say Stygian. Let's just go over here, and because my mouth's clearly not working, if I look at these guys, haha, and I take them off of a horse, not all of them have a base length that will work for this. So you do have to pretty much just only use the Valandian pikemen, which we're going to show off right now. So I will show you how devastating this is and the pretense in which you can actually use it and how to really optimize it on the battlefield. So here's my ragtag army of Valandian pikemen. And one thing to kind of note here is that they are in line formation. And aside from that being the default of how you zone in, it is the best way to really use the auto bracing. Now again, remember this is in a beta branch, so there is subject to some changes as it goes live, and there probably going to need to be a number of changes to this as a whole. Like I said, the weapon base length in and of itself is probably the largest cap upon this ability. And the way this is going to work is those horsemen are going to charge down range into a field of pikes. And this will really only work effectively in this stance. I've tried it in a number of them, especially I really wanted to see square work effectively here. And we can maybe test that out at the very end just to kind of show you guys how it works. But essentially square doesn't allow them to have enough room to densely pack in. They kind of get stuck in perpetually moving and trying to adjust. So they never have the ability to brace their pike, thus not allowing them to, well, defeat a cavalry charge. But I really wanted a really cool formation of just a square of pikes defending against a cavalry charge. But let's go ahead and jump out of photo mode and see how this works. So you can see in the corner, lower right corner, we have a little symbol that pops up when you stop moving. You press X and wha-bam, you can now brace your pike. And as that cavalry gets closer and closer to us, my units will auto do it. You can, oh, sorry guys, you get the ability, you can kind of move around, do whatever so wish. Let's go ahead, and you can aim it like that too. As they're kind of coming at you from different angles, you'll be able to aim it. So we're going to pause it too, right when they get pretty close, just to show you the whole entire line. Doing it like they're doing right now. That's a pretty good scary distance. Let's go ahead and press that, and then press this. So as you can see, the whole line, a little graphical glitching there, the whole line is now braced. And I'm actually going to go to options. We're going to go to gameplay. I don't have this turned on by default, so we're gonna turn it on right now. Let's enable casualties. So take a look in the upper right corner. What happens when these guys hit? Like, I just did 126 damage to that horse. We just did 13 kills. They killed one of ours. So you can see how absolutely devastating this is when it actually hits. Oh, hey, okay, back off. Trying to make a point here, dude. Jeez, these Imperials. But when this actually makes contact, it is devastating. Unlike, you know, any other spear unit, which really can't get off the ground when it comes to a direct charge in the face. Of course, over time, they can maybe whittle down the opposition, but this really changes the game. And I think right now, unfortunately, only Vlandi and Pikemen being able to use it is good because it gives the Pikemen finally a place in the Vlandian roster without just kind of being like, okay, why would I go down here when I can just go sergeants? But B, it's a little annoying to only have it accessible by one unit. So I think that Tailworlds will, according to our feedback, will hopefully pivot this and allow it to be accessible to more units. Again, lowering that weapon base length. But let me go ahead and show you guys some how this kind of pans out. Oh my god, get away, dude. So you can jump right back into brace pretty quickly. So this guy over here, and you have to aim at them. Oh, you can still get kind of clipped, right? Obviously, and your units will continue to brace, as you can see right there. Dead center, they'll continue to brace as things come and go from the conflict. So it's an amazing little addition here, but let me go ahead and show you what happens when we do this in square formation. So I've told my guys to go into a square, and you can kind of see what happens. Some are in position, some are not. It just takes a long time, and without that pre-battle setup, which we know is coming, go ahead. Yeah, see there, they just go to block. They don't even go to brace. So I think that there's probably a way around this, and it would require really you being able to set up with more time. And again, we know that that pre-battle setup will eventually come for the game, and when it does, I think that that will be the time that ability is useful. Without the ability for them to actually start in that square right away, they can't really seem to brace properly because here, we'll just kind of show you in live right now. They don't get the ability here to get into a good square. See, they just kind of meander about. I'm going to try and make this again as large as possible. They kind of get lazy about it. You know, Vlandians and all. Armed peasantry.
Forward!
But again, like I said, once they do that ability for us to set up the battle beforehand, which again, they've mentioned in the developer blog that is coming, I think that once they start in that position, they'll be just fine. And I mean, even though so, that actually worked out a little bit better than it has before, but they're still not going to brace properly. Yeah, see? Again, not nearly as effective. You didn't see that death roll happen in the upper right corner, so plenty of issues with it, but I think it's a very good start for the phalanx formation to eventually kind of rise out from this. I think it's really great that we'll probably see this added to a lot of the mods that we already know and love. Like, I mean, when you take a look at the man, not Imperator Rome, that is a whole entirely different game. Eagle Rising. They have plans, obviously, to add a lot of different cultures of the era, of antiquity, of the classical era. And having the ability to actually have a working phalanx is amazing. That's going to be so strong for modifications. And like I said, if it's a field in there in the XML document that allows them to just say, okay, weapon base length equals 230, move it down to 150 for the modders, then that is way easy for them to just really make this accessible to all those other great, awesome mods. So very stoked on this, guys. It was something that has kind of kicked around a little bit more as people have mentioned it more and more on the patch notes video, saying, hey, you totally glossed over this. And I apologize. I did gloss over it in my patch notes, so I really wanted to give this its just deserves. So let's be stoked on it. I just hope that we get it to working in a a lot better and more succinct method than it currently is implemented. But again, as always, it is super exciting. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.